Okay, super. So, so Jim, it's a delight to meet you. Can you tell us your backstory?
um, well, I guess it's the backstory of Sam Adams. I started it in my kitchen in 1984, before there was craft beer, back when American beer was just a wasteland, and you couldn't get good American beer, and the best you could get were stale imports. And I came from a brewing background. I'm the sixth oldest son in a row to be a brewer, so I knew a little bit about beer. But my dad had been a brewmaster, and he kept losing his jobs as the breweries closed. So he didn't want me to go back into beer, and I didn't. And I went to law school, I went to business school, ended up at a consulting firm, worked there for 6 years, and then realized I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. And then I realized, well, the rest of my life starts tomorrow. So I went in and gave my notice, without knowing what I wanted to do. And I looked at a lot of businesses and settled on the one that I was the most passionate about, which was beer. And I looked at like high tech businesses that were much more promising, that could have been funded. Nobody wanted to invest in a small scale brewery. I mean, venture people turned me down and basically did it with friends and family. And the whole company started with two people. I made the first batches in my kitchen. And, but it was a beer that nobody had ever had. Nobody ever had beer that, great, fresh, rich, flavorful beer like Sam Adams. And that helped launch this whole craft beer revolution. It's 34 years later, and there's 6,000 craft breweries in the United States, with four new ones opening every single business day. So it was a rebel, and I named my beer after Sam Adams because he started a political revolution, and I wanted to start a beer revolution. And the revolution succeeded in both cases.
That's fantastic. This is a question that I often ask CEOs and founders, and really both can answer. Both can answer if you like. What have you done to help your employees thrive?
That's a very good question. And one of the things I learned very early on is that something you don't learn in business school, which is in business, it's all people. Everything happens with, by, and through people, whether they're your customers or they're your employees. So we very early on started a training program. I think, we started our first training classes when we were maybe 10 or 15 people, because I've always believed that your company is only the set of skills that your employees have, and you need to keep developing them. And we hired people who were from outside the industry and who didn't really have the skills that they needed. We didn't hire for resume or experience. We hired for energy, talent, drive, self-awareness, resourcefulness, mission of service. We defined a bunch of characteristics that we thought our people should have, and said if they have those characteristics, we can train them to do everything else. And in the beginning, we were mostly had to learn to sell beer because the distributors wouldn't take us. We had to sell it ourselves. We had no money for advertising. We went from bar to bar selling beer. So we developed first, selling skills, and then building brands through distributors and so forth. We now have a curriculum of about 15 courses that people take as they develop in their careers.
Wow. Okay, amazing.
Well, it was interesting. I had a distributor ask me, well, why do you spend all this money training people when they might leave? And he said, well, that's a sort of makes sense, I guess, but not when you think about it, because, what if you spend money training people and they leave? Well, that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is, what if you don't spend money training them and they stay?
That's great. That's great. That's profound. And the truth is, I think I may have heard that. So that line may have become famous when you invented. That's great. That's really
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's great.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So, can you or both of you can weigh in? Can you describe this fascinating new venture in bringing venture capital to a wider audience?
Well, it's not actually venture capital. It is much more basic than that. What we do through the Sam Adams Bring the American Dream program is basically microfinance. We make small business loans to people who are smaller than the Small Business Administration deals with, right? They say it's the Small Business Administration, but they want to make loans of $100,000 and up. You know, our average loan is less than $10,000, and many times we start out with somebody who basically just has a business plan and enough ingredients to fill a grocery bag, and has real passion and pride about what they want to do, like Jessica. So she started out with a $2,800 loan, which she then paid back and then got another loan. So, we deal with businesses that are too small for anybody else to deal with, and part of the reason that doesn't exist, other than programs like Sam Adams Doing the American Dream, is you can't make money on those loans. They're too expensive to make, screen applicants, administer the loan. So it has to be done as a philanthropic activity. But the people that we make these loans to have such a high sense of integrity. Our repayment rate is 98%. That's better than banks get, because we're lending to real people who have a sense of obligation and pride, and they want to repay the loan, even if they can't afford it.
Yeah.
So we're loaning on character, and it's worked.
Yeah, like my loan was $2,800, and how at the time when I did it, I only had a business plan. There was no other part of the business. I think I had just purchased the domain name, and so that's all I had. I had a landing page with contact info and a business plan when I received the loan, and I actually split it up. I put half of the loan into savings to pay it back, just so I would never fall behind on payments, and the other half I used to actually invest in my business and make these samples and everything. And for this business plan competition I was in, and my goal in doing the business plan competition was to actually pay the loan back. And, because I'm like, if the business is, the whole point of behind the business plan is like to just see whether or not it's feasible. Sometimes you have a business idea and it's cute, but there's no real business there. And I'm like, all right, these people have already given me their money. I don't look at, I didn't look at how everyone interacted with me as some like nameless bank. Like there was a person who spoke to me, who cared about me, who cared about what I was doing on all sides. This a person who has his own job with Sam Adams calling me a part of this Bring the American Dream program. And so I felt like I was paying a friend back. And so it was just like, I have to make sure he gets his money. And that was the goal behind the business plan competition. And I wound up actually winning the grand prize for $10,000 and being able to, or was it 15? No, it was 15,000. I'm sorry. There was a $15,000 competition prize. And I paid the loan back and invested the rest into my company, and actually, kept my relationship for the next phase of my business. And we were able to get a secondary loan to support the opening of my shop that just opened 3 weeks ago. Yay.
Amazing. So I recently read a report in Fortune magazine that of all the venture capital that was lent out. I know there's different. Only 2% of it goes to female-owned businesses, to female entrepreneurs. It's to me, it's a a shocking number, a horrible number. As a business leader yourself, what would you suggest can be done to remedy the situation? What are maybe the systemic issues that underlie those numbers, and what can be done to redress them?
Well, it's a really good question, and I have some personal experience with it because my wife was a biotech entrepreneur. I don't know if you know, but with 6 kids, I'm sure your OB has provided the option of banking the umbilical cord blood for the stem cells in that.
Yeah.
My wife created that industry 26 years ago, starting in her apartment. Yeah. And so I watched. I mean, that was obviously a great idea, right? But it took her a very long time. And I mean, just totally honestly, there is a bit of boys' club in venture firms. I mean, you see it, and a lot of it's not even conscious. They just the way they do business, the jargon. I mean, to be a venture capitalist, you're kind of a cowboy, and they kind of pride themselves on that. So it kind of develops a lot of more masculine attributes. So to me, one of the first things is for people in the venture community to just realize that, and they're not sexist people. They all have wives and daughters that they have aspirations for. So they're not bad people, but they should just be, to me, just be aware of the talent just be aware of the simple fact that when they want to lend to smart, aggressive, talented, resourceful people. Well, guess what? When God made smart, aggressive, talented, resourceful people, she made half of them women.
Well said. Okay, so this is my classic question. This is kind of the theme of so many of my articles, and the question can go to each of you, and you can answer after each other. Going back to when you started, looking back, are there 5 things you wish somebody told you when you first started that you learned over the course of your journey?
I'm sure there's at least 5. But I'll try to tick off some of the things that I should have known, or somebody should have told me when I started. I guess the first one was that it's all about people. People trump strategy, people trump financial resources. Everything wins with people. So you just have to start with the people. And I was lucky. My first employee became my partner. She was an amazing human being. And like I said, we didn't hire resumes. We didn't hire experience. Rhonda, the woman that I started Sam Adams with, she worked with me at Boston Consulting Group, but she was a secretary. And what we don't think about, but there's a lot of truth to it. We think America is a meritocracy, right? But not really. In a lot of ways, it's a caste system, not based on birth, but based on education. And so I was at Boston Consulting Group, great institution, wonderful, amazing people. Rhonda was there too. Rhonda was a secretary. And there was no way, no matter how good she was, how capable, she would never have crossed that caste barrier from being a secretary to being a management consultant, because she didn't have an MBA, right? So that was the caste system based on education. But the subsequent, experience of Rhonda, who helped build Sam Adams and Boston Beer Company, is living proof of just how capable she really was. But without that MBA, she would never have been anything but a secretary. So I guess that's my second point is that talent comes in all kinds of shapes, sizes, and packages. And you've got to learn to look to talent, not any of the wrapping that it comes in. What, three more things? I mean, the third thing is all product and the quality of the product. Because, any consumer has lots of choices, no matter what they're doing. And as a small company, you can't compete at the commodity level. You cannot be cheaper, but you can be better. And you only have a business if your product is either better or cheaper. Otherwise, why would anybody buy it? So as a small business, cheaper is not going to really work. It has to be better. So it all comes down to having a superior product. And then I guess the last two would be selling. In a small business, you got to learn to sell. And you don't really think about that. You think, well, I'm going to make this great product. People are going to fall in love with it. And somehow you forget that step. Well, generally you have to sell it to a retailer. And how are you going to do that? I had to, and Jessica, same thing. You got to show up and actually sell it. You walk into the Whole Foods and you say, I have this great chocolate. I have this great beer. It's so good. I'd like you to taste it. You got to tell your story, and you got to learn to listen with high awareness, and you got to realize that the essence of good selling is not this Willy Loman manipulative stuff. The essence of good selling is figuring out how what you have to offer will help the other person accomplish their objectives. Selling is all about helping the customer accomplish their objectives, not yours. It's all about them. And then the last thing would be that, starting a small business is hard. It's at best a roller coaster, and it's going to have ups and downs. And if it's, not working, you're going to have to work your ass off, and it's going to eat your life. And if it is working and taking off, you're going to have to work your ass off, and it's going to eat your life. So there's no alternative to that. And the only way you can really, persevere through that is if you have real passion about your product and what you're doing. Is that 5? Okay.
Super. Fantastic.
Yep.
So, Jessica, would you like to share?
Yeah.
Your 5?
My 5 is definitely going to be pay people when the work is done. That's the lesson in the story of my life for the last year. 2, it's not about who is best first. It is who is there last. And yeah, sometimes for myself, I overthink it all, and I'm trying to be like, I can't do what the big guys do. They have more money than me. They have more market share. They have more everything. I have me. And so what I can do is just continue to make sure that I'm there. Number 3, allow people to grow with you. For me, there were times that I stopped myself from putting things out because I'm like, this box isn't perfect yet. And does it fit? You have a little structure of is it good? Is it nice? Does everything work about it? Then do it, and you can get the fancy stuff a little bit later, and then number 4 is, this is going to be a thing away, even as an entrepreneur, practice self-care, right? It is only me. So there are going to be times I have to go to bed because you've just counted that box 75 times and somehow you can't subtract 3. So either you need a nap, a rest, something. And if you don't practice self-care, you'll never get to where you want to go. And number 5 is have fun. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's just, there are ways that I find, especially being in groups of entrepreneurs and stuff, I'm like, wait, why did you stop having fun? Like, why did you stop enjoying what you do? Like, you've made it so about, oh, we have to meet. There's a way to meet that while you're still not a robot and everything. And so I make sure that, okay, for me, when things, not to say like everything's just going to be fun, because listen, I have a date with QuickBooks tomorrow and I am not really looking forward to it. But at the same time, it's still one of those things that kind of brings me joy, because I'm working within my business and I really love what I do. And it's important not to get so run down by the business that you resent it. I've seen people who walked away from their businesses because they resent them because of an issue that you could have found. Like, if you aren't having fun with an aspect, how do you make it better? How do you divvy up that workload between the people that you have? How do you allow people to help you with getting it done so you don't hate it? There's no reason to kill yourself for your business. Your business, the things will get done. You have to break it down. Sometimes it's not the pizza, it's the slice. Take a slice, eat that, go back and finish the rest. But sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're always focused on the pie, you're always focused on the pie. You can't eat that. Somebody has to sit with you, grab a beer. You might have to talk it out. How are we going to eat this? How are we going to break it down? But it'll get eaten. And so have some fun, drink your beer, and get it done, and it'll get done. And that's the way you don't wind up hating your business, and you enjoy yourself while you're doing what you do.
That's awesome. Right. I want to read your book when you write it.
Listen.
I'm going to learn something.
Now, I'll be honest, I think I've done like more than 1,000 of these interviews. That was among the most thoughtful answer I've heard in all my interviews. It was really very, very thoughtful.
Very good. It really was.
Oh, my God.
Listen to the rabbi.
Listen, I appreciate it. And it was so funny because we were just talking about it. Like, I don't have the same, it's just me and two of some of my close friends. And when we were thinking about how do you make sure that your people thrive. And so when I was going at this, I knew that I have amazing people in my life who all have talents. They just, especially when you're coming from my community, and when we talk about, it's all these things that overlap. We're talking about women. We're talking about the opportunities they have. There's a lot of times that women aren't even told that the skills that you have kind of relate to something. Being able to juggle 6 kids is operations manager. It has a COO written all over it, and sometimes we're just not taught that those aspects of who we are translate in this business world. So I selected 2 people that I'm like, the way that your minds think are perfect for where we're going to go. And it's a lot of convincing them that they're good at what they do, but they have blossomed. It is amazing to work with them. I have other friends that I'm like, go out, continue to work this field. And as you learn where you need to learn, I can't afford to hire you to learn those lessons right now. Someone else can. And when you're done learning those lessons, we should have a space for you. And, and if you don't, and if you just love where you're at, stay there. But this is the thing that I think that you're made for. And I have one more friend that I'm trying to prime for my operations manager. She thinks that she's just anal. And I'm like, no, you're perfect. I call her in once a month to clean my closet.
That's great. It's a food product.
Yeah.
Anal is good.
And she's like, just the way she thinks about things. Like me, I'm just kind of like, I'm thinking about everything. Like that pizza advice is just something I tell myself on a regular basis because that's what I do. And I'm like, Jessica, eat the slice, eat the slice, eat the slice. And but she can go into a room and reorganize it so the flow and so you can take one package and this package and that has the label. And it's just like, you don't realize that when you're not a corporation, like corporations have things that do this. And, there are people that do this. There's somebody that when you go into the Gap that sells up, the bags are here and this paper's here.
That's right.
There's somebody that does that, and that's what I'm learning, is that we need to do that. It doesn't just all happen. You think when you open and you run into a business, it just kind of like does that, like, who puts the bags together so we know which bag to take? And we have to kind of develop those processes. And so.
Well, what I'm hearing is you really are good at recognizing talent, even though it's not the exact talent.
Yeah.
It's the more generalized form of that talent
Yeah.
that can be applied to your problem.
And that's what I took from the book, because it was just like when I was reading the book and just about how to really not focus on, these people don't have credentials in these places. Some of us went to college, some of us didn't. I mean, most of my friends did, but at the same time that we got degrees because our parents wanted us to get jobs. So, but it's not in these areas, teachers, this, that.
Yep.
But I'm like, no, the way that you just operate as a person, you could do my operations. Like,
that's right.
That's what you can do. That's what you're good at. And so that's how I'm learning to look beyond that and like, no, what are you in tune with? Okay, yes, you've never worked with chocolate before. You've never worked in a small business. But what do you like doing?
Yeah.
And what makes you happy? What brings you joy? What makes sure that you show up and you don't hate what you do? And
that's right.
and those are the things that I ask now for my first round of like hiring and everything.
Yeah, I mean, when we hire people, one of the and we formalized it now, but we hire somebody into a job, and we have a like a form thing that people fill out about what is a person who is going to be really successful in this job. What are the adjectives that describe them?
Oh, that's dope.
Yeah, and then we match that up with the employees, the candidates, and they have a similar thing.
Yeah.
And we ask them, what are the adjectives that describe how you are?
Wow.
And then what are the adjectives describe how you think people want you to be? Wow. And what we've discovered is if the things that people need to be to succeed in their job match up with what they are, forget resume, forget experience, grades, all that stuff. If you're inherently motivated to do the things that you need to do to be successful in a job, you're going to be successful. I never forget, there was a guy I was interviewing for an accounting job. Yeah. Right. And so we'd given the guy this little test. It's called the predictive index. And I'm looking at, his name was Hank, I'm looking at his results, and it had nothing that would match with an accountant, right? He had a high need for proactivity and taking control. Mm-hmm. He had a high need for social interaction. Mm-hmm. He had a low need for patience, and a low need for order and structure. Yeah. And I'm like, this is not good for an accountant. You don't want somebody that wants to be creative in their accounting. Yeah, right. You don't want somebody who likes to be around people. You don't want somebody who has no patience. Yeah. And you don't want somebody who doesn't like order and structure. Yeah. But those are great characteristics for a salesperson. Yeah. So I asked him, his name was Hank. I said, Hank, do you like being an accountant? And he said, no, but my dad was a CPA, told me if I got my CPA, I'd always have a good job. And so, okay, so you don't like it. I got a question. Have you ever thought about selling beer? And he's like, oh, I could sell beer? Long story short, we hired him as a salesperson. He got promoted 3 times, married another Boston Beer Company salesperson, and they lived happily ever after. Amazing. Yeah, he never went back to accounting.
Oh, wow. See?
Yeah.
Come on, dropping jewels. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's been a real delight meeting you. So this is my final question. I'm very blessed that, very prominent CEOs or figures in entertainment actually read my column. So this is your chance to reach out to them. Is there somebody that you would like to have a breakfast or lunch with? Anyone in the world? Who would that be and why?
Oh, gosh, this is sort of sad. It would have been Steve Jobs. I mean, he's like, that to me, his biography was awesome. We all dream of that. It's such a great story. He starts something in his garage, builds it up, then the money guys get control of his company. They fire him. They immediately start to fail and fail for 10 years. And then they realize their mistake. They bring the entrepreneur back. He turns the company around and makes it the most valuable company in human history. I would love to ask him, how did it feel, at each of those points?
That's great. Super. What would you say?
Right, and I guess this is the Harlem part of me, but it would be the person who has turned himself into a multi-million-dollar business, and it'd be Sean Combs, because the way that he has, the way he structured his marketing and his businesses to all like work toward this goal is amazing to me. And that's definitely somebody, just a quick bite. It don't have to be nothing fancy. I'll bring my own food. You know what I'm saying? Like
shot of Ciroc vodka.
Right, a little, you know what I'm saying? A little bit of Ciroc would be nice. I'm not even asking. I bring my own bottle.